Bonjour, Bonjour, Waji, Tansi, Kwekwe, Bonjour. Welcome to the Decolonizing Diet Project, and we are happy to see all of you here tonight. My name is Ken Pitawanakwit. I'm the Anishinaabe instructor for the Center for Native American Studies here at Northern, and my job over here is to try and impress upon you the importance of this project that April has been a part of, and many of us are a part of still. It's been a little over 7.5 months, give or take, that they have been on this initiative, and it's the first of its kind. I'm proud to be associated, so it's my chance to stand up here and say, hey, I was part of that. Hey, there's me. I can show somebody back home. I'm from Manitoulin now in Wikwemikong, Ontario, Canada, Wikwemikong Unceded Indian Reserve. My first language is not English, it is Anishinaabe. Gitchinen up to question, Gitchinen Dalmashin the woman in the book, Gitchinen Dalmashin the to question that mino. Give me what you go this. Comes in the odds from an each can near the mock, mino, Nenaquid Madium. It gives me great pleasure to introduce my friend, mentor, colleague, and the director for the Center for Native American Studies, Haudenosaunee, April Lindala, and she is going to give the Kwe, or female perspective, on tonight's presentation. Chimigat, so you may please give a warm welcome to my friend.
Miigwech, Buju Sego, April Lindala, Nandishnakas. I'm very glad and honored to be here this evening. This is our last event for Native American Heritage Month at NMU. And the center and many other entities on campus, the Native American Student Association, the Multicultural Education and Resource Center, the Beaumere Heritage Center, many others have put forth a very, very productive and busy month for November, and we're tying it up tonight. So I'm very excited to see so many of you here this evening. Before I start, I want to pay my respects to the Anishinaabe ancestral homelands of which we are standing or sitting upon. This project, at the heart of it, is the Anishinaabe teaching and relationship to earth and food and subsistence. And so I want to take a moment to recognize the Anishinaabe people of this area before I begin. That is customary to do that before, especially when not in your area. And so I'm a transplant to the Upper Peninsula, if you will, and so I'm grateful to be here and share this presentation with you this evening. I want to get started with just kind of an introduction. If you don't know, what is the Decolonizing Diet Project? In November of 2010, Dr. Martin Reinhardt introduced the idea of eating a Great Lakes Indigenous diet to employees at our NMU Center for Native American Studies. Over the next year, he, along with student researchers, began to build a food list, a map of boundaries and borders that would define the Great Lakes region. He submitted a required proposal to NMU's Internal Review Board, and 1 month and 1 year later, in December of 2011, a master food list in hand, on 1 week of Indigenous eating under his belt, Dr. Reinhardt convinced 25 other research subjects to take part in his Decolonizing Diet Project study. On March 25th, 2012, our group embarked on a journey together known as the Decolonizing Diet Project. And when I say journey, it's been just that, maybe not a physical journey across lands, but a journey of body and mind, emotion, and even spirit. What led me to consider doing a research project of the nature I'm going to talk about tonight was really born of myself videotaping my own experience in doing what I was doing as a research subject as part of this project. I found myself videotaping myself making what Marty called microethnographies. I did a videotape of myself doing making a turkey, making white pine needle tea, going out and foraging. And so in talking with some other folks on campus, including Dr. Alex Rushka, she said, yeah, that's absolutely the case. And there's a lot that could be said for actually learning more about what that means. And so she actually recruited me to audit her Anthropology 498 Introduction to Ethnography Field Methods this semester. And so this is a culmination of my being a part of her class this semester and kind of taking a more concentrated look at the female perspective in participants in the project. Now, this is only one thread of what could be a large quilt of studies that could be done on the Decolonizing Diet Project, and Marty Reinhardt has plenty of ideas on things to come. But this just really was something that I wanted to concentrate on because I felt it was important to see what other women felt as subjects of the group. Just a moment here on the screen, I want to introduce Marty is not able to be here tonight. He's on the left-hand side. He's making wild rice milk in that picture. I talked about the map and border lines around the Great Lakes region. You can see that it extends well beyond that of Michigan, all the way into western Pennsylvania, parts of Minnesota, Ontario, and so on. So it's not just concentrated to real local, as some people understand local eating to mean. Great Lakes region is extended beyond that, and we talked about that a lot in that we had to have had trading going on, trading with other communities around the Great Lakes region. The waterways were a great way for traveling, and so that was something that we did talk about. And then the picture on the top right is Tina Moses over here, standing over here, but she's in wild rice beds collecting wild rice, and that's just one of the events that our subjects were able to take part in as part of the project, Decolonizing Diet Project. Now, ethnography literally means a portrait of a people, and it is a written description of a particular culture, the customs, beliefs, and behavior based on information collected through fieldwork. And I just wanted to include this quote as kind of a way to say, well, what is an ethnographic study? Because I kind of promoted it as such. Interestingly enough, one might think of a traditional social sciences as going to a faraway land and studying a people different from their own. And that could be the case in many instances, but this is a little bit different. I didn't really have to go anywhere per se. In fact, our communities were pretty much online. And so my going away, if you will, was oftentimes referring to some of the communities that we have. So what I wanted to share with you here is, this is our primary community online, and this is called our Decolonizing Diet Project Share Site. Marty has an opening greeting at the top. Below that, there's a number of resources. This is not only for research subjects, but anybody who wishes to log in and see what recipes we're doing, what is the master food list, what's the overview, what is this for? So there's a PowerPoint that explains that. Below the resources includes all of us as research subjects. And this is not an anonymous social science study, if you will. We're very much out there and having a conversation. So you can see our names are actually on each one of us as research subjects. I am personally research subject number 13, lucky number 13. So there's 25 of us, and you can see some of us withdrew, and we have added on some subjects later on in the study as well. So I just want everybody to kind of see. This is our community, and so we can go in, and you can see here I have 12 unread posts. I haven't gone into that person's particular blog lately to see what she's been up to, but somebody else I might have actually kind of kept. I don't have any unread posts for Jessica, for example. She always has really interesting things to say about her experiences. So she's one I actually do visit quite a bit and have engaged in conversation with quite a bit. Another online site that we have is our Facebook site, which is probably way more popular to the outside world in that so many people are on Facebook. And as you can see, we have 161 members to this site. obviously way more than the 25 research participants. In fact, the 25 research subjects don't necessarily all have Facebook. So this has actually been a good way for us to communicate with other folks interested in what we're doing and the importance of food and the relationship of indigenous foods with peoples. And so we have a lot of great conversations with people that have nothing to do with our particular project, but have an interest in want to kind of peek in from the outside. And so this is another community of our online community, if you will. Less frequented one, from myself anyway, is our blog spot. And I think it's probably less something more informational than anything else. And while if you're a part of Blogspot and you respond to blogs, you certainly could communicate. But Marty pretty much keeps this one going for informational purposes only. And so this one hasn't been one that's been real communicative in a two-way or more multiple people. Another way to see what's going on more visually, we do have a Flickr account. And so you can see we have a lot of different sites and sets depending on not only an event that we might have. We had a cooking demonstration in September. There was a gathering in May. But each one of us as research subjects also have our own sets. And some people have been more active in posting photos onto their individual set than others. All right, so what is it about the female perspective? Well, obviously I am female, but I felt that there was something deeper to be asked. There was something kind of gnawing at me. Why do this? And for myself, I had my own reasons and why I wanted to do it. I felt it was a good challenge, but I felt that there was something deeper because it is a Native project, but it's not solely for Native people. The makeup of the group is such that we have quite a few non-Native participants. Some of the participants are college students. Some of the participants are grandparents who've long graduated with grown kids and independent lives, as you will. Some of the participants are young parents. So we have a real different, diverse makeup, and we wanted it that way on purpose. So I guess one of the things that I thought about is we do have more females in the project than males. And when folks were withdrawing from the project for whatever reason, Marty would insert a joke such as they bit off more than they could chew here. One of the things that we noticed was that more males were actually withdrawing than females. And so for some reason, there was kind of maybe more perseverance on some of the females maybe to think, I can keep doing this, I can keep doing this. But I also wondered if there was something more about connectivity. What I heard from some females in talking with them as part of their 6-month interviews, which I'll get a little bit more into, was that there's a connectedness, that they really enjoy the communal aspect of the project, especially when we have events. We're coming together over food. And so people really enjoyed that. But I think I do have to address the idea of positionality because that's part of an ethnographic job to do that. Who am I as part of the study, and what am I doing as far as this as an ethnographer? And so positionality is kind of unique for me because not only am I a research subject, I'm a project staff person. So in essence, I have multiple lenses that I see the project from. So in that sense, I'm maybe considered an insider, if you will. I have the EMIC perspective because I'm part of the project. But I also may be viewed as having an outsider's perspective in that I could be considered as a project staff the ultra insider, in that I know that things are going to happen with the project ahead of the other research subjects. In fact, I might be the one doing the announcing. Here's what's going to happen next. And so I could be viewed by other research subjects as maybe an outsider in that regard. So that's just something that I wanted to address because as social scientists, we kind of need to be mindful of who we are, what are our biases going into the study. And if anybody's ever taken a sociology or anthropology class, you understand that difference between the two different perspectives there. One thing I wanted to to really talk about was this idea of what drew me to this, and studying the female perspective as well, and that is the intersection between Native women in the projects and non-Native women in the project. Something that I kind of noted, and this is from my own attending gatherings and ceremonies in the Great Lakes region, I've come to appreciate the role that Indigenous women play, especially as it relates to water and gardening and gathering. In this region especially, we're obviously surrounded by water, so that's very, very important to Anishinaabe women, being caretakers of that water. That's part of their traditional roles that they continue to pass down to this day. The project itself is entitled Decolonizing, and that being the act of resistance of colonization, but more importantly, a revitalization of cultural actions, such as maple sugaring, foraging, fishing, gathering, hunting, wild ricing, and so on. So how do women fit into that action of colonizing? I found a briefing note on gender and Indigenous people and Indigenous peoples' environment from the United Nations office. A declaration of the Moluccan states, quote, Indigenous women have a fundamental role in environmental conservation and preservation throughout the history of our peoples. We are the guardians of Indigenous knowledge, and it is our main responsibility to protect and perpetuate this knowledge. We are daughters of Mother Earth, and to her we are obliged. Our ceremonies recognize her, and we return her the placentas of our children. She also safeguards the remains of our ancestors. So in essence, this briefing note from the United Nations from these people kind of are very parallel to the Anishinaabe people in this region. That same idea of being protectors of the earth, returning placentas is a very traditional act. So I found that these kind of indigenous parallels between two different groups of people was important to note. However, further in that UN briefing note, there is a statement from the Convention of Biological Diversity that states, quote, the vital role that women play in the conservation and sustainable use of biological diversity and affirming the need for the full participation of women should be at all levels of policy making and implementation for biological diversity conservation. And what I want you to note in that sentence is that the word indigenous is not in front of women. It covers all women, have a role in that. And I tend to believe that that's because that statement was made is because I think women are not at that table of discussion. That's just my theory. So what if it was more than just action? What if it was part of the fabric of who we are as women? Kathleen Wilson wrote in her essay, Therapeutic Landscapes and First Nations People, Anishinaabe consider the land to be a female entity and a provider of all things necessary to sustain life. She also notes the relationship Anishinaabe have with the land cannot be captured by the simplified notion of being, quote, close to nature. The land is not just seen as shaping or influencing identity, but being an actual part of it. So in doing this research and doing my daily blogs, I was curious to see how other women of the group were doing with the project. Did we have similar ideas about this? My questions continued to creep in my mind. In referring to a woman's menstrual cycle or moon time, were women actually going to gather things? Were they eating wild game? Now I know these things because of my attendance in traditional gatherings and ceremonies of this region, not necessarily from my being affiliated with the university. But these are the kinds of questions that came into my mind. Another question was, do the DDP females know or understand the role of Anishinaabe women in relationship to food, water, and earth? Do female participants wish to talk about these things? Of course, I didn't have all the answers to this. I just had more questions pop into my head. So Marty and I would talk about these things on a few occasions, and we came to the general conclusion that this research is not to be an extended lesson in Anishinaabe epistemologies. This is not to say that we as a larger group or just the women can't have these discussions. It's just not that type of research project. The project was a Native project, but open to all people, and we couldn't assume that all women would have an understanding of Anishinaabe teachings. So during my 6-month interview, Marty asked me, do you think there is something missing because I came up with the project and I'm a male? Okay, this is a fair question to ask, but I don't think it's solely because Marty is a male. I think in my mind it speaks to the larger issue that research had to be approved and done within an institution, an established system already dominated by the male population and male thinking. Now, I'm talking over centuries, not specifically this year. So I don't think it's in sense just his responsibility to have thought of this idea, but maybe I was the only one thinking of these questions. What I did note over time, though, as I was reading the blogs of the females, they were engaging with each other, so sending each other supporting comments, answers to questions, being cheerleaders for one another. Again, I really noticed that essence of the need for relationship and relationship building. So even in this virtual world of our DDP blog site, women were reacting to and supporting other women. Now, how did I go about doing the research for this project? The methodology, if you will, from the social science perspective. Well, as research subject, as I've already mentioned, we have to do our daily blogs. And admittedly, I'm guilty as everybody. I don't do them every single day. Sometimes I have some built up in notebooks and I enter them later. And some I have actually a few weeks just generally missing, like summer didn't happen to me. And some other folks are in the same boat as I am. Our lives are very, very busy, and that's actually something that's come up in conversation. But the share site is one thing that I did utilize in part of my research, was looking to see what people were saying and what was going on in their daily lives. The other avenue I was able to utilize was the 6-month interviews that were required of everybody in the project. And so being able to either read transcripts or interview the women myself, I kind of gathered some information from that. So early on, I found myself being really, really intrigued with what our other volunteer research subjects were composing. We were learning about each other, our families, our living experiences. We knew what movie someone saw and if they snuck in DDP snacks with them. We knew about family matters. We knew whether someone had a tough day at work. On a personal note, about a month into the study, I lost my father. While I was at my mother's house, away from my own kitchen and my own computer, I read a lot of the experiences of the DDP group to help keep my mind occupied during this challenging time. Reading everyone's experiences helped me to remain connected to our growing community. But in truth, I felt as though I had bonded with some of these individuals, some who I had never even met before the research began. In addition to reviewing journals of the subjects, I was able to, as I mentioned, interview female participants. Early on, I had actually suggested that I go to them, to their house or their farm or a place that of their choosing, where we could see something in action, whether that be cooking a meal or carving wild rice sticks, whatever the case may be. And initially when I threw up my invitation on the blog site to do that, I didn't have very many responses. I had a couple people respond here and there. And then, admittedly, even one person said, oh, being on a camera is the last thing I want to do, but I'll do it. So in essence, what ended up happening is, like the rest of us who attend college and are a part of the academic year, 16 weeks started to tick by very, very fast. And Marty, since he had to do the 6-month interviews anyway, we decided to split up the tasks. So one of the things that we found is, instead of being able to go to the women in their homes or on their turf, if you will, we ended up doing the interviews in our offices in kind of a more set up space. We did come up with questions, and he interviewed me and I interviewed him, so we beta tested the questions, found out we had to make some changes, and even as we were asking research subjects questions, we allowed them to either expand or ask follow-up questions. So it was important that for us that we could be flexible with this and not stick to a real cemented listing of questions, although we had certain things that we had to have answered. So the common themes that I found with folks, females in the study, these are the kind of the 4 areas that I'm going to discuss. I wasn't really interested in quantitative. Quantitative experience is how many people ate wild rice on a certain number a day, how many women are married, how, ages. I was more interested in the qualitative experience. I wanted the stories. I wanted to hear more about stories, and that was more what I was interested in. So I asked, as we asked in the 6-month study, why did everyone take part, not just the females, but why take part in this study? And so I kind of looked at some of the answers from the women, and I'm going to just share a few of the responses with you. One subject said, just to get back to the roots, just kind of the way our ancestors ate, and because all the gross stuff that's in food today. Another research subject said it converged a lot of interests that I've had for many years, including nutrition, because I was academically trained as a nutritionist, but I've also been interested in Native American issues since I was in high school, and I love cross-cultural exchange. And I love being out in the woods, and I believe that we need to become more local in the way we eat. So all of those reasons. Another subject said, I'm really interested in natural foods and eating simple, whole foods and more local things. A lot of the DDP foods are fairly local, so I like experiencing that. One person said it was really interesting. She was really interested in finding out what our people ate traditionally. And it's hard because a lot of people don't know that anymore. And finally, it was a connection with the community that might be involved with this. So again, that connection kind of come up as a theme. One of the questions I asked was, Marty and I asked as part of our 6-month interview was there specific things that came up with being female in a part of the study? I think one of the things that we found are the idea of traditional roles between males and females was something that came up quite a bit. We in our society have the female, gardening, where for the protein aspect, the hunting and fishing part, that would be the challenge. I grew up with my dad teaching me to fish, those kind of things. The male I know who hunt, that seems to be a guy thing. I was never offered a real chance to hunt. That was one person's response. Another person said, it seems like that's our instinct, to be the food preparers. I have a strong personality of nurture. I want to. I'm a stay-at-home mom. I enjoy it. I love taking care of my family. And so I prepare all the food. I cook all the meals. I do all the grocery shopping. I do all the planning for everything in that regard. And I kind of leave it up to the husband to be the hunter. You know, the one who gets the venison, the fish, and the birds. And we feel very comfortable in those typical old-fashioned types of roles. Another person stated, I think the strongest factor was when my kids were still at home and I was the main cook for them. Gender roles have changed so much, they aren't clear-cut in my family. How might it have been different if I were male? Well, you know, I haven't been male very much, so I'm not sure. The hunting thing. I grew up hunting with my dad until he actually shot a rabbit, and I was sad. That is a pretty male-dominated activity. Now, fishing, I grew up fishing with my dad. I would have gone fishing this summer had I a partner. But, you know, I don't think a guy would have said that. I don't need to go with anyone. I'll just do it. So those gender roles about hunting and fishing and gathering, well, certainly I am a gatherer, and that has made me possibly even more eager to be in that role, the gatherer role. So I have some more, comments similar to that where we saw women were kind of more the gardeners, the gatherers, the foragers, whereas we found that their response to that would be, well, they might get venison if their husband was a hunter or a brother or uncle, but they themselves weren't hunters. And this isn't to say that nobody was, it wasn't 100%, but the majority of the females kind of had a similar response. Even though some of the women did say they wanted to become hunters, we actually had some women say they never really had the opportunity to learn how to hunt. So I thought that was really interesting to note. In connection with each other, what I found back and forth on the share site were these conversations happening. And in the first few months, there were pockets of conversations between certain individuals. But that eventually slowed down. I think, like my own summer disappearing off of the blog site for a while, conversations started to disappear as well. but every now and then you see a connection between two women. Very few times have males either responded or connected. While they do their own posts and are independent, for the most part, it's the females responding to other females. So it's not 100%, but if you were to really go through and look at it, like I have for this, I found that it was mainly females responding to females. Conversations on the share sites, typically between two or more women, could go something like this. Well, let me read this one first. Our foraging, social cultural experience together as women act as a continuation, as I said, revitalization of our culture, but also the lack of experiences due to time and scheduling. Our fast-paced, overextended lives and not living in close proximity with each other hinder our gathering and time together. I think there's something in my DNA that makes me miss and long for this. I'm so looking forward now to spending some separate time with my DDP Quaywog friends. No offense, guys. It would be good for us and a meaningful component to the overall project. Another person responded into having this conversation about women. Gathering and preparing dandelion greens would have been perfect. Or I could talk about women's teas. There is a whole list of things that benefit a woman's body. And bring a sample of each ingredient. I can bring a finished product, a jar of tea, and I'm fine with a group idea. That would be fun. I think we need to do more group things like this for the DDP to keep us pumped up and on board. I know many are out of Marquette, so it might be challenged, but I would love to participate in something like that. And in response to what she was saying about the group ideas, when I asked individuals that I interviewed in the project, I asked the women in particular, would you want to take part in a group activity of just women, whether it be a day, whether it be a weekend? And all of them unanimously said yes, they would participate. My other question to them was, would you want it to be video recorded or not? And unanimously, they don't know this, but I do, unanimously they said no, we don't want it recorded. And one of the things that I thought was really interesting about that is that even though we're in a very open community, anybody who has access to the World Wide Web can see what we're up to and see our conversations. I thought that was really interesting that here was an opportunity that for one more thing, but I think they felt that it was something that they wanted for themselves as kind of a special bonding event among the women participants. And so I kind of felt good about that they didn't actually want absolutely everything recorded and out there. And for those things that we are putting out there, trust me, we appreciate that too. Some of the other things with regards to connecting for others, unfortunately, I wasn't the only one to experience loss during our project so far. There were actually some other ones who had received bad news like this. From one person who posted, many sincere apologies for my absence. My dad went into the hospital the day after my last post on April 26th and died a little over a week ago from unexpected kidney failure. It was a challenging time full of many beautiful moments, but alas, I didn't manage to record my diet. I am glad to report, however, that I've kept my minimum 25% commitment of DDP foods throughout that time, and it gave me an opportunity to talk about the project more than usual, as lots of family and friends showed up with mounds of mostly non-DDP foods during the long vigil for my dad, and they were curious why I was eating beans and corn tortillas instead. In response to that particular post, other women certainly expressed their sympathies and well wishes for coming back to the site. Because we do miss each other when we haven't read each other's stuff in a while, and that was one noticeable absence. Another post, sadly, when I got home after the potluck, it was a DDP potluck, there was a message for me saying that my best friend's husband, who was also my friend of nearly 40 years, died from injuries in a motorcycle accident. His funeral is Wednesday and will include 3 hours of live music played by all of his musician friends, including his son. In response to that, someone wrote, I'm so sorry to hear about the death of your longtime friend. I've lost a few friends and a first cousin to motorcycle accidents. It's not an easy way to lose someone. May the music comfort and heal. Now, these have nothing to do with food per se, but the idea that this is kind of a deeper connection, that again, it's not in a physical space of community, that it's in this virtual space. I find that it's been very, not just interesting, but healing for people. And so I've been kind of intrigued, and for my own self, when I lost my dad, there were several messages of sympathy with regards to my own circumstance. Another aspect that I looked at was, for common themes, family relations. Now, if we were following everyone else's posts, one thing we learned was that family dynamics were not always peaceful. And I don't really want to concentrate on those items in particular, but females in particular were very open to the idea of sharing their concerns. And as a result, other females lent words of support and encouragement. And again, a lot of the time this had nothing to do with the diet. It just had to do with how their day was going as part of their narrative amidst having to cook or amidst having to gather or amidst having to go shopping. And so I think it was just really interesting, again, to see the words of support and encouragement. Next, I wanted to talk about some specific experiences. We had one individual who had to have surgery during the DDP, and rather early on. And so I'll just post a note here. She, in coming back and writing back to, as we were watching her heal and reading things about her own healing from her surgery, oh my goodness, does it hurt to laugh? I actually found this out a couple of days ago. All those abdominal muscles moving uncontrollably, it makes me laugh more trying to hold my stomach and feeling it move. We had big plans for foraging and gardening this summer, and with my condition and all the things that have to be taken care of, we haven't been able to do what we want. So here is somebody who's noticeably had a change because of a health condition and not able to do some of the things that they had planned as part of the DDP. But again, a female responds to this post saying, I'm sorry to hear that it hurts to laugh, but I'm glad that you feel like laughing again. Surgery can be painful. So I hope you can be tender to yourself as long as your body needs you to be. And I know what you mean about plans for gardening and foraging not working out as planned. I hope you keep feeling better. Additionally, there were some specific life choices that were made because of the DDP. From a research subject, this post. I feel like this is one of the last times, if not the last time, making bread. It has killed and is killing Indian people with heart disease and diabetes. It is one of the tools that contributed to colonization. I've been sober since 1991, and I quit drinking alcohol because it has killed and is killing Indian people. It also was a tool for manipulation that led to colonization of Indian people, so it was an easy choice for me to do this, but also because it further connected me to my spiritual path. Fry bread, however, very much connected to those gatherings, as it always has been a part of our feasts. It's expected to be there. To boot, people expect it of me. They expect me to make it. But because of the DDP, I have been seriously thinking about ending my fry bread days, making it and eating it. The whole diet makes me further think about food sovereignty. We work hard to decolonize and nurture our minds through indigenous inclusive education. This diet is helping us decolonize and nurture our bodies, yet another way to try to find true balance. In response to that post, Nahal, right on. Somehow we have to rethink and rechannel fry bread power. We need to rise up like fry bread Doyle in hot oil oppression and take it higher. The DDP people and others who have taken a stand against this chronic disease-laden, quote-unquote, Indian food must move forward and out of this colonizing hole we can't seem to climb out of. It's time, eh? By you discontinuing the practice of fry bread making, people will take notice and start questioning this destructive food item and custom, and hopefully will act on it. Miigwech. So one of the research subjects made an important decision at the 6-month mark. Again, these are, decisions that are being made, which and somehow are tying in with the project itself. And so I wanted to share this one because I thought it was something that not only was very personal to share, but the response to it was very, very supportive. Post this past week, I decided to quit drinking alcohol. I feel that's something I should have done beginning at the diet to help in the decolonizing process. I don't even want to tally what I've spent in the past month because I do like trying new craft beers. This may be hard because lots of my friends want to go out on weekends, but I think this is something I have to do right now. In reaction, 2 other women responded with supportive messages. Response number 1, I praise you for making this important decision and wish you all the strength and perseverance in the world to attain this goal. You have taken a valuable step forward. I'm glad I took a peek at your post. Seek out ways to help yourself. Response 2, I am so proud of you. This is the best thing you could do for yourself in this light. Ultimately, being sober to experience life is more exhilarating than when I used to drink. Don't give up. You'll be glad you did it. Additionally, there were times when choices were thought about but not acted upon. And in some cases, that's in relation to our communities, our Indian communities in particular. Post, I went to this feast to honor graduates, and they received a grant for, quote, traditional foods. It was funny because look how much is under non-DDP, and they must, because looking at it, not much was DDP. They must not have tried that hard to get traditional foods. In response to that, somebody wrote, I know it's sad about the traditional food thing, but our work through the DDP will help bring some change around here, the Great Lakes region and Indian country itself. Already we're being the change we want to see in the world, as Gandhi said. So in our hopes for the future, in talking with the women, as I mentioned with regards to the 6-month interview, it is something that I feel like I have to maybe take initiative to do in putting together activities, whether it be group or otherwise, for the women, to have a channel and opportunity for them to share some of their experiences. And you can see from just the comments that I shared from both the interviews and the sites on the blogs that these conversations are in some cases rather deep. They're not trivial conversations. It's just about what were we eating for the day. And so I think that for the most part, this type of gathering for the women would be very, very helpful. While I didn't really verify whether women found themselves identifying with themselves as being more worried about being conservators of the land or necessarily being interested in learning much more about Anishinaabe teaching, I think that the idea of connection was probably the most important. Several of the women noted that a fear upon the end of the project was that they would lose connection with the people that were taking part in the project. And so that really told me that being kind of a group was important to them. And it's impossible to obviously take out a crystal ball and see, but I think in some ways we will be bonded, and whether it be through this virtual community that we have, or whether it's in person, I do hope and wish for the females who participated that we do get to stay in touch with each other. So with that, I will close. This has been my study of our female participants in the Decolonizing Diet Project, and I know it's been some kind of specific information to share with you, but I would invite you, if you do have any questions, feel free to ask, and Amanda here is going to share the microphone because this is being recorded, so we would like you to ask any questions that you have in the microphone. Don't be shy. Question on the back.
Maybe you answered this already.
Oh, turn it on.
Turn on. Test. Go again. Test.
There we go.
There we go. Maybe you answered this already. I thought I heard you say, I have hearing issues. When you were interviewing Native, Nish, and non-Nish Was there anything that jumped out at you as far as um, their responses to a given question?
You're asking if there was anything that kind of stood out to me in responses to various questions?
Yeah.
Yeah, I really only concentrated, we asked several questions of each subject, and I really only concentrated on 4 primary questions, which related to why they took part in the project, how did they kind of envision themselves as far as like their gender and the project. So I think for me, what wasn't surprising was this idea of the traditional roles of a lot of the males were the hunters, the people who did the fishing. And I did interview a gentleman, and he was actually afraid to answer the question because for fear of it's going to sound sexist. And I said, well, that's sort of our we want to know is, are there traditional roles still in place with regards to food gathering and he said that he probably would envision himself more as somebody who might do the hunting as paired to a female. So he was actually in a way kind of scared to answer the question about his role as a male in the project. But the females in particular, that was the one that I guess I wasn't surprised. They did really reinforce that females, and I've heard this with Haudenosaunee women, females were the ones who took care of things that came from the earth, and the males were the ones who took care of things that were upon the earth. So those who swam and walked and flew, whereas the women took care of the hunting or the gardening and the gathering. So they fell into those roles.
How many pounds have you lost?
13. And I'm 25%, so I'm not. When I went 100% for the 8-day week-long mini challenge, I lost weight every single day. So maybe 4 ounces here, 6 ounces there.
Like you, I've been privy to some inside information, and we noticed one subject got sick shortly thereafter, the initiation, start of the project. What I gathered was a reaction to bacon and eggs. Could you, or were you able to ascertain if the diet project sort of attributed that somehow, or was it just one of those things?
Paul, did that get picked up? Yeah. The question is, we had the one research subject that had to have surgery. There was a theory, and we believe that, in fact, it was verified, I guess, that what happened was the research subject's 25%, her 100% husband fed her bacon and eggs for Mother's Day, thinking he was doing a good thing. And it turned out not to be such a good thing. And so she ended up in the hospital for quite a few days. And from my understanding, there was a relationship there with regards to the food and the diet and the body going into a system shock. But I didn't, concentrate too much on some of that physical aspect with my study. So, except to say I thought that was an interesting post of support that, she wrote she was having trouble laughing. So, there was a question in the back.
When you were talking about traditional gender roles and some of the women wishing that they had a husband or a dad or whatever kind of initiating the fishing and hunting, were there any women who took the initiative to learn the traditional ways of either fishing or hunting?
That's so far that I've read in the transcripts. Now, I actually would say I have not read every single transcript yet and I have not because I haven't interviewed every single female, but from everybody that I read, which is a good majority of folks, there was not anybody who had taken, during this project, who had taken that initiative. I will say there were 2 that I'm aware of that wanted to learn how to hunt, but didn't have that opportunity. And I'll talk to myself as an example. For a number of years, I've actually signed up for the DNR's Becoming an Outdoor Woman thing that they have hunting safety for women. The DNR puts this out. And thought, oh, okay, this is a good environment. I'll do this, and I know some of the people that are kind of leading it and in charge of it and stuff like that, and they're kind of, prodding me and urging me to do it. I've even written the check, and every single time I have a conflict that comes up, and I've never been able to do it. So I feel like I've tried to make that possible, and I've told my male friends, I had a call at. This was several years ago. I had a call at 2:30 at night because I told this one friend of mine, I said, yeah, I want to learn how to hunt. And he's like, oh, yeah, I'll teach you. I'll take you out. And he called me at 2:30. Okay, we're going shining. No, that's not what I meant. I really want to learn how to do this in a good way and, with daylight. And so that wasn't exactly what I had in mind. But so I think there were some who had wanted to learn how to do it, but just haven't had that opportunity. But it was interesting, in the majority of cases, it was a dad or a grandpa teaching. There was one aunt that, amidst the ones that I read, there was one aunt who showed how to do hunting and fishing. So. Any other questions? Oh, one over here.
I noticed that when you were talking about who was doing this project, how many were with children and families?
Mm-hmm.
And how did that affect that family with the diet project?
Oh, that's a great question. We do have some young mothers, and so we have one particular young mother who's still been breastfeeding, and so she has two really little ones. We have a young mother who has a 2-year-old, and then we have a mother, I think she has a 2 and a 5-year-old. And I kind of sense that the three of them had a lot of common themes because they're the main food preparers. And so their kids, would be teasing them like, oh, well, not teasing them. The kids want a cookie, they want a cookie. So, but the mom would then be like, well, then I got to have a cookie, So they're struggling with this idea of, okay, I'm going to make my wild rice and blueberries for breakfast, but little, Johnny wants something else. So they found that it was interesting in a sense and a challenge in a sense that they were having to cook multiple meals for multiple mouths, basically. And we have however, we have some folks who will find that wives and husbands, the husbands may or may not want to eat what the wife is eating. So they may be two separate meals for just the husband and wife. So that's similar as well. But the one thing that stands out was the idea of the children, and if they wanted something, that sometimes the mom struggled with eating what the kid wanted to. So the child, I should say. Mm-hmm. That's a good question. Mm-hmm. For the most part, I would say we do have, like I mentioned, we have more women in the study than males. Many of them are in a relationship, and we do have some that are partners together in it, so that as partners they're doing okay, and or if they're not in it, then for the most part that the male has been extremely supportive. We've not really seen too many instances of folks, family and close people that haven't been supportive of this idea. In fact, what we saw feedback from both male and female, a lot of doctors or nurses would actually kind of joke about, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? So that was something that was really interesting to see, was the feedback from physicians, where you would think they would be happy that you're trying to do something healthy, because this is a gluten-free diet. This is a diet that's, we've seen health results where it's a high vitamin diet. So the health results have come in, and they've been, proving to be kind of what we've expected. Some weight loss, not 100% weight loss, but a lot of folks have been losing weight. But some physicians have been, or nurses, health people have been kind of, in fact, my doctor asked me, kind of jokingly, teasingly, so have you had porcupine yet? And I responded, no, I missed that potluck. And she kind of was shocked. What? Because she was being facetious. So I really was bummed I missed that potluck. I wanted to try porcupine. I would say the one thing a lot of people have asked about outside of this study has been, is there going to be a recipe book? We have collected right now over 70 recipes, and there's like a draft recipe book form that some copies were given as prizes at the First Nations Food Taster earlier this month. So eventually we would hope to see that something like that come to fruition by maybe this time next year, to see a real well done, well crafted, very beautiful photographs, have a recipe book. So that is something that I get asked a lot. And the males and the females contribute equally. They're very, that's one thing I would say, that there's no silent fellas on the recipe forum. The guys love to show off their recipe cooking skills. So while they might not be as much in the conversation mode on individual blogs, they do like to show off their recipes. Is there a class here tonight? I just was wondering if there was a class here. No? Everyone's just interested? That's pretty cool. Would anybody, did anybody go to the First Nations Food Taster to try the food? Raise your hand, I want to know. So, okay, for those who didn't get to make the food taster, are you curious about the food? Yeah? Yeah? Do you have any questions about the food? I mean, you don't know what you don't know, so how do you ask, right? I think my biggest thing, and I was going to play a video, but then I didn't. My favorite thing has been white pine needle tea, and that's also been kind of the, people raise their eyebrows, like, what? White pine needle tea? But actually, if mixed with maple syrup, it's just really light flavored. It's like an iced tea to me. It's like, and I crave it. I actually crave it in a good way. So that's probably one of my favorite things. I'm being directed in the back, and I don't know the sign language given to me. Tina is asking for our DDP research subjects in the room to be stand up and be recognized. As you can see, they're all female. Just kidding. So we also have DDP staff members here. Will our staff member that's here stand up? Speaking of the recipe book, Sam has been instrumental in helping us put together our recipe book. So, yeah. Any final questions to close out this evening in our Native Month? Well, if any of you do have any other questions, either tonight or anytime, stop by our Center for Native American Studies. We're in 112 Whitman Hall, right across the way here. Oftentimes at lunchtime, we're around the tables having food, and we've had students come in and other people come in real curious as to what we're up to and what we're eating. So thank you very, very, very much for being here and hearing my presentation on this. My ethnographic study was pretty interesting and fun to put it together. So I appreciate having a very attentive and respectful audience. So miigwech, thank you very much.